Welcome to the Explainer. So, today we're diving straight into the hidden social dynamics of saltwater aquariums. If you've got a reef tank or you're planning one, you already know making it look good is literally just half the battle. The real trick? Getting everyone to actually get along. We're going to break down the exact science of saltwater compatibility. Think of this as your visual guide to figuring out who's going to be best friends, who's going to be absolute mortal enemies, and, most importantly, why. Okay, let's dive right into this. You look at a glowing, serene aquarium, and it's super easy to think all those colorful fish are just living their best lives in perfect harmony, right? Well, let's challenge that for a second. Is your beautiful reef tank actually just an underwater fight club? Seriously, mixing species isn't just about picking pretty colors. According to the experts, who you put in that tank completely dictates whether you get a thriving, stable community or just a nonstop cycle of chasing, stress, and injuries. Now, you might be thinking, hey, I only buy fish labeled reef safe, so I'm good. Well, we gotta shatter that myth right now. Reef safe absolutely does not mean peaceful. All that label really tells you is that the fish isn't gonna eat your corals. That's it. It guarantees zero about how polite they'll be to their tank mates. Actually, a lot of saltwater species are perfect little angels when they're young, but man, their aggression levels can totally skyrocket as they mature. The model citizen on day one could easily turn into a tiny terror by year two.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look beyond that reef-safe label, then cover the 4 main drivers of compatibility. After that, we'll check out pairings that actually work, look at some recipes for tank disasters, and wrap up with practical tips for introductions.
Section 1. Beyond the reef-safe label and the roommate metaphor. To really get a grip on compatibility, you kind of have to stop looking at your tank as just a glass box of water. Think of it more like a shared apartment. Just like human roommates, finding a good match brings long-term peace. But a bad match, yeah, that just creates a super toxic living situation. Section 2. 4 drivers of compatibility. The rules of the house. You see, aquatic experts aren't just guessing when it comes to fish behavior. Now, what's really interesting here is that they look at 4 very specific, measurable drivers to predict if these roommates will chill or clash. First up is temperament. Basically, how naturally wired is the specific fish to act like a bully? Number 2 is tank dynamics. We're talking physical space and available hiding spots. 3 is feeding. Who's throwing elbows when the food hits the water? And finally, behavioral mismatch. This is the big one. It's what happens when you accidentally mix a natural predator with its prey, or you put a hardcore territory defender in with a fish that just wants to peacefully wander around. Moving to Section 3. Pairings that actually work. The ideal roommates. Let's look at the bright side for a minute and talk about the specific combos that actually create a stress-free vibe in the tank. Your best bet for a solid community foundation? Small, highly social species that couldn't care less about claiming territory. Fish like cardinals and chromis are absolute rock stars here. They pair up beautifully with docile midwater swimmers or even the bigger community tangs as long as you've got the gallon capacity. The golden rule you want to remember is this. Pair fish that have similar aggression levels, but make sure they don't overlap in their daily jobs or the physical niches they occupy in the tank. But, and this is a huge but, condition matters immensely. You could literally pick the most laid-back, docile fish on the planet, but if their apartment conditions are garbage, fights are absolutely going to happen. I'm talking about crowding, zero privacy, or one fish acting like a total vacuum at feeding time. Those stressors will make even the sweetest fish turn incredibly hostile. The environment dictates their behavior just as much as their DNA does. Which brings us to Section 4, Recipes for Tank Disasters, the bad roommates. What actually happens when you force the wrong personalities together? Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. A classic disaster recipe right here, mixing those peaceful, wandering midwater swimmers we just talked about with highly territorial bottom dwellers. Think about it. If you drop a fish that naturally wants to roam around into a confined space guarded by a fierce territory defender, that defender is going to violently harass the poor newcomer every single time they cross an invisible line. It is an instant, massive clash of lifestyles. Another huge no-no, dropping predators in with small-bodied tank mates. A predator frankly doesn't care about your dream of a peaceful community reef. They just see your little roommates as an expensive snack. Then you have the issue of overlapping roles. If you put 2 assertive species in there and they both decide they want the exact same rock cave or the exact same feeding corner, aggression is going to spike instantly.
So the crucial point is understanding what failure actually looks like here. It's way more than just a minor annoyance for you to watch. The physical toll on the fish is grim. When compatibility planning fails, you get rapid chasing, brutal fin nipping, and this sustained chronic stress that completely wrecks their immune systems. In extreme cases, we're talking severe, life-threatening injuries. As the landlord of this underwater apartment, preventing that is entirely on your shoulders.
Section 5. Practical tips for introductions. The landlord's action plan. Let's look at the exact step-by-step game plan you need to manage your tank like a pro.
True compatibility planning, it literally starts way before you ever bag up a fish. You have to research their adult size. Remember, the fish you see swimming around at the local store are usually just juveniles hanging out in a temporary setup. You need to know exactly how big they're going to get and what their mature adult temperament is. You've got to plan the boundaries of your tank before you ever hand over your credit card.
All right, so you've done the research. Here is the actual chronological journey of bringing them home. Step 1. Always quarantine new fish. Introducing a disease into your main display causes massive stress, and stress puts aggression into overdrive. Step 2 is huge. Add the least aggressive species to your tank first. Give the gentle guys time to settle in and claim a spot before you add anyone assertive. This prevents major territorial shock. And step 3, keep a super close eye on things for the first 2 to 4 weeks, because that's when the new social hierarchy is being hammered out.
Let's move to the physical setup and see how this builds directly into your tank's design. Your aquascape is a tool for peace. You want complex rockwork and caves that create shaded areas to break the line of sight. Think about it. If an aggressive fish literally can't see its target, it can't relentlessly chase it around. You also want to make sure the water flow allows fish to establish comfortable physical boundaries, and definitely feed them multiple times a day so nobody is fighting just because they're hungry.
Now, if fights do break out, and sometimes they just do, you need to intervene fast. First, bump up the feeding opportunities to drop the competition level. Second, get your hands wet and rearrange the rockwork. By moving the furniture around, you essentially reset the territorial boundaries for the entire apartment. If both of those fail, you have to physically separate them. Basically, you're handing the bully a formal eviction notice before any real damage is done. And this brilliantly illustrates a core truth about the hobby. An expert who gets a long chart should only ever be treated as a starting point, never an absolute guarantee. Every single tank is completely unique, and frankly, fish have their own individual personalities. You can follow every rule in the book, but keeping the peace still requires you to be a thoughtful, observant manager. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Take a hard look at your own aquarium right now, or the one you're sketching out in your head. Think about those roommate dynamics, breaking the line of sight, and making sure you don't have overlapping roles. How will you design your next tank's layout to guarantee peace? Take these practical tips, do your homework on adult fish sizes, and go transform your tank from a stressful fight club into a truly thriving, peaceful underwater community. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Catch you next time.